I was sitting out here grounding, and the phrase "everybody dies, but not everybody lives" came to me. So when Drake said that, and I know he isn't the one who coined that term, but that came to me in my mind, and the spiritual aspect or side to it all started being pieced together. And I want to go ahead and put this out here. I'm not a religious person. I'm not a celebrity worshiper. I see there's lots of hidden spiritual messages that's put out in the media and TV shows and video games and books, in the Bible, other texts and stuff. So what if this phrase wasn't talking about a physical death, but rather that everybody dies in a spiritual sense? Everyone becomes out of tune or disconnected from their authentic self, from their higher state of consciousness, where they see, hey, everyone and everything around me is creating, but I also co-create with everyone and everything else around me. Sure, there's power outside of me, but there is also power within me, and I have the ability to create or destroy just like everything else. Disconnected in a sense where people aren't in tune with themselves, they don't believe in themselves, and they only see the world as physical existence, and they can't see beyond the surface and see how everything is interconnected and working as one, which is literally what makes existence. People are dead in the sense of believing money alone or the government alone is what shapes reality, and that they're insignificant or whatever else. All these different ideologies and beliefs that were implanted into people's mind through the media, through television, through bullying, through hardships in life, and whatever else. And this was done purposely to keep you small-minded, because whoever controls your mind controls your body too, and controls your existence. You see, because when you come into this world as a child, you're happy, you're joyful, you're imaginative, you're playful, and you have big hopes and dreams. And then the world kills you with its doctrine and with its ideologies, making you continuously place the power outside of yourself for change, for happiness, for growth, or for life and meaning. And if I were to tie this to the Bible, it literally tells you to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. When you look up the word carnal, it means physical, and you could relate this to animals. So when you operate in your animalistic nature, you're brought back down to your lowest level of consciousness, where you're in a scarcity mindset. All you care about is food, shelter, water, and reproduction. You are quote unquote dead. You're not thinking from a higher perspective. Your mind is limited. And because carnal means physical, this is also representative of people who are super materialistic, only care about clothes, cars, money, outward appearances, their social status, all these surface level things, and don't see beneath the surface. In the Bible, it also states death and life are in the power of the tongue. So how are people raised up or brought back down consciousness? Through words. It's funny also because Yeshua, Jesus Christ, Isa, whatever name you want to call him, it talks about how he raised the dead. Now, what did he go around doing? He went around speaking to people. So it's like words can be empowering or they could be destructive. And this is why people who have been bullied or mentally tormented have been in such a stronghold their entire life. This is also why in schools, or at least some of the schools I went to as a kid, they tried to train you from a young age. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, because they wanted you to not know the true power of words. This is going to bring ties back to my very first video I made, but words can be curses or spells. What do we call it when you're putting letters together to form a word? We call it spelling. There was a time in school, at least in America, when they taught cursive writing. The words that you speak are curses, are spells. Even when you think of a child, when a child is young, when a child is born, they're happy, they're playful, they're joyful, they have an imagination. Their mindset isn't limited. Anything they believe they could do, they could do. This is why you see kids, they'll be climbing on top of the refrigerator and, jumping off of a dresser, or, crawling, into vents and doing all sorts of crazy stuff that drives an adult mad or crazy, because they're like, what am I going to do with this kid? This kid is, they're going to get hurt, blah, blah. And the child's mindset isn't limited. They believe they could do anything, and we call it imagination, but that child is truly alive. That's why people say, oh, they're so full of life. but the world tends to come down on people. They bully them. They tell you, oh, you're ugly, you can't do this, you can't do that, that's not possible, or good luck with that, and the people in the world says all this stuff to tear people down and drain the life out of them and make people quote unquote dead, carnally minded, bring people down to where that's why there's so many adults. The only thing people worry about or focuses on is getting the bills paid, making sure there's food, water, and shelter, and being able to sleep around. And there is so much more to life than just that. But the world has a stronghold on people and has made everyone dead. So I believe the phrase everybody dies but not everybody lives has a much deeper meaning. And funnily enough, in the Bible it even says to enter into the kingdom of God or heaven, you must become like little children. And even in the book of Luke 17 and 20 through 21, it establishes that the kingdom of God cannot physically be observed and is within you. So within you has to change, and you have to become like a child again, where you see that there are endless possibilities. You see that you could manifest and create reality alongside everyone else, and that your life isn't just dictated by external forces, but you could also yourself influence the world and co-create with everyone and everything else. One of the hardest things that I struggled with going through life is I was always naturally a creator, always like drawing. I like building. I'm someone who started creating some of my own car parts at one point in time and modifying cars crazily. And I've built, crazy costumes before as a teenager. And it's funny because when I did these things, it was like when I would tell people about it, there'd be so many people who are in disbelief, and not in the way of disbelief like, wow, I can't believe you did that, but disbelief as in, you didn't do that. People legitimately thinking I'm just a liar, I'm just some crazy person who's just, talking out his butt. And it's just amazing how life has really programmed people to believe that they are just so limited and that only outside forces or certain individuals can do things. So yes, I do believe it's true. Everybody dies, but not everybody lives.